Senate will come to order. At this time, I will ask all unauthorized persons to exit the chamber. I'd like to recognize the senator from Northwest Georgia.
Mr. President, it's a beautiful day at the Capitol. The men and women of the Senate are working hard for the people of Georgia, and bills are about to ignite coming out of committee. On this very date in 1919, President Woodrow Wilson designated the Grand Canyon as a national park. And also, for those of you who don't know, his first wife is buried in Rome, Georgia. And for those of you, do you know why she's buried in Rome, Georgia? Because she's dead, that's right. The journal's been read and found to be correct. That was kind of funny.
Thank you once again. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? Hearing none, the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills and resolutions to introduce, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. Mr. Secretary, first reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions.
Senate Bill 179 by Senator Albers of the 56th, a bill entitled Enactment Article 6 of Chapter 2 of Title 40 of the OCGA, relating to administration and enforcement of chapters so as to provide for the adoption of a real-time internet service models to provide for the electronic transmission of
insurance and labor.
Senate Bill 180 by Senator Jones of the 25th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Chapter 10 of Title 15 of the OCGA, relating to magistrate courts so as to provide for an increase in the minimum compensation.
State and local government general.
Senate Bill 181 by Senator Jones of the 25th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Code Section 3414.1 of the OCGA, relating to the creation of the State Workforce Development Board, federal
insurance.
Senate Bill 183 by Senator Huffstetler of the 52nd and others, a bill entitled Enactment Chapter 2 of Title 40 of the OCGA, relating to state administration and enforcement of revenue and taxation, so to provide that
finance.
Senate Bill 184 by Senator Kirk of the 13th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Part 1 of Article 1 of Chapter 18 of Title 45 of the OCGA, relating to the state employees' health insurance plan, so as to provide that services covered under
Health and Human Services.
Senate Bill 185 by Senator Parent of the 42nd and others, a bill entitled Enactment Article 1 of Chapter 4 of Title 49 of the OCGA, relating to general provisions for public assistance, so as to provide for a qualified
Health
Medicare.
and Human Services.
Senate Bill 186 by Senator Coward of the 46th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Chapter 12 of Title 53 of the OCGA, relating to trusts, so to establish qualified self-settled spendthrift trusts.
Banking.
Senate Bill 187 by Senator Parent of the 42nd and others, a bill entitled Enactment Code Section 35.334 of the OCGA, relating to disclosure and dissemination of criminal records to private persons and businesses.
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 188 by Senator Walker of the 20th and others, bill entitled Enactment Code Section 33.714 of the OCGA, relating to reinsurance of risks, so as to provide adequate regulation of reinsurers to provide for the incorporation.
Insurance and labor.
Senate Bill 189 by Senator Cowser of the 46th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Chapter 33, Title 31 of the OCGA, relating to health records, so as to provide for costs for copying medical
records. Health and Human Services.
Senate Bill 190 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Article 2, Chapter 9 of Title 19 of the OCGA, relating to Child Custody Interstate Jurisdiction Act, so as to provide that its party.
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 191 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Title 15 of the OCGA, relating to courts in Code Section 47.2.263 of the OCGA, relating to credit for certain past service as an assistant.
Judiciary.
Senate Resolution 243 by Senator Orrock of the 36th and others, a resolution urging the United States Congress to impose limits on the President's first-use nuclear strike capabilities and for other purposes.
Rules.
Mr. President, that concludes the order.
First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions, please.
House Bill 26 by Reverend Belton of the 112th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Chapter 39 of Title 43 of the OCGA, relating to psychologists so as to enter into an interstate compact known as the Psychology Interjurisdictional Compact.
Health and Human Services.
House Bill 70 by Reverend Administration of the 104th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Title 29 of the OCGA, relating to guardian and ward so as to revise provisions relating to guardians and conservators.
Judiciary.
House Bill 85 by Representative Houston of the 170th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Code Section 48.83 of the OCGA, relating to exemptions from sales and use tax so as to exempt sales to organ procurement organizations from sales and use tax.
Finance.
House Bill 105 by Representative Watson of the 172nd and others, a bill entitled Enactment Article 2, Chapter 7, Title 48 of the OCGA, relating to the imposition, rate computation, exemptions from state income tax so as to exempt
Finance.
House Bill 161 by Representative Benton of the 31st and others, a bill entitled Enactment and Act to create a Board of Elections and Registration for Jackson County, approved April 20th, 2011.
State and local government.
House Bill 208 by Representative McCall of the 33rd and others, A bill will be titled an act to amend Title 36 of the OCGA relating to local government so as to change the terms for contracts for utility services.
Regulated industries.
House Bill 217 by Representative Gaines of the 117th and others. A bill will be titled an act to amend Code Section 161332 of the OCGA relating to transactions and drug-related objects so as to provide that employees and
Health
agents.
and Human Services.
House Bill 221 by Representative Roger the 10th and others. A bill will be titled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 9 of Title 10 of the OCGA relating to revenue bonds for the G.O.L. Smith II Georgia World Congress Center.
Finance.
House Bill 226 by Representative LaRiccia of the 169th and others. A bill will be titled an act to amend Code Section 1521-179 of the OCGA relating to additional penalty for violation of traffic laws.
Public Safety.
Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Secretary will now read reports of standing committees.
Mr. President, Senate Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration the following legislation. Instructing the board send back to Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 9 do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 104 do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 135 do pass. Senate Bill 154 do pass. Senate Bill 158 do pass by Senator Stone the 23rd. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Public Safety has had under consideration the following legislation. Instructing the board send back to Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 137 do pass. Senate Bill 149 do pass by Senator Alvarez the 56th. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Finance has had a consideration of final legislation instructing the board send back to Senate for recommendation. House Bill 183 do pass, Senate Bill 127 do pass, Senate Bill 128 do pass by Senator Hufstetler 52nd. And Mr. President, Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor has had a consideration of final legislation instructing the board send back to Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 132 do pass, Senate Bill 133 do pass, Senate Bill 142 do pass, Senate Bill 156 do pass by substitute, sent by Senator Jones the 25th. That concludes the order.
Secretary will now read bills and resolutions for the second time.
Mr. President, there are no second readers.
It's now time for a morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the senator from the 55th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 36th.
Without objection, the senator from the 36th is excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th.
Good morning, Mr. President. I rise to ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 2nd, the senator from the 12th, and the senator from the 26th for business outside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senators from the 2nd, 12th, and 26th are excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 20th.
Good morning, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 13th for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 13th is excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 11th for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 11th is excused. Are there any additional motions to excuse? Secretary will call the roll of senators. Signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. At this time, we're going to introduce our Doctor of the Day, and I'd like to call on the Senator from the 42nd to do so.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'm proud to introduce to you Dr. Stephen Holbrook. He practices emergency medicine in Decatur, Georgia. He is the previous medical director of Grady EMS and DeKalb Fire and Rescue. He is currently providing emergency medical services to our veterans at the VA hospital and is a clinical physician at Georgia Tech. He's lived in DeKalb County for 33 years, graduated from West Virginia University School of Medicine, and completed his residency at Emory Healthcare. Please join me in welcoming and thanking Dr. Stephen Holbrook.
Thank you all for being here and providing the services that you do for the state. You know, certainly as an emergency physician, I have lots of thoughts on safety, and you guys have done a very nice job over time in keeping the first responders, fire EMS, police, in the emergency rooms, trying to keep them safe and in your thoughts. And we do appreciate it. Have a good day. Thank you.
It's now time for our morning devotional. All senators, please take your seats and cease all audible conversations. Doorkeepers, please secure the doors. I'd like to recognize the senator from the 38th this morning to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance and to introduce our chaplain of the day.
Good morning, Senators. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Georgia. Pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and for the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation. Thank you, Senators. It is my honor and privilege today to introduce to you the Doctor of the Day. We've had him before. He's a wonderful minister and gives us a great sermon. He is Dr. Charles Gardner. He has served 5 different United Methodist churches in North Georgia. Most recently, he was an associate pastor at Northside United Methodist Church in Atlanta. He previously served as the youth pastor at Calhoun First United Methodist Church, pastor of Pine Mountain First United Methodist Church, as an associate pastor at Peachtree Road United Methodist Church, and as the pastor of the historic Atlanta First United Methodist Church. He holds a BS degree in construction management from Georgia Tech, a Master's of Divinity from the Candler School of Theology at Emory University, and a Doctor of Ministry from Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C. Charles is a native Atlantean and resides in the Spring Lake neighborhood of Atlanta. Also, with being an avid runner and golfer, he enjoys spending time with his wife Shannon and his son Zach. And together, they pursue their passion for travel, theater, and sporting events. Charles is currently on sabbatical, working on several projects, including a book on politics and religion. Please welcome Dr. Gardner.
Good morning. It is always such a privilege to be with you, Lieutenant Governor, Secretary, Senator Tate. Senators, thank you as always for your kind invitation. When I was here for the special session, I had the privilege of being here for our special session, and I had some thank yous, and the one thank you that I forgot was to thank all of you for your hospitality for the pages. My son had the opportunity to be a page for Sine Die last year, and he still talks about what an incredible experience that was, and taking pictures of him standing on the floor as the papers flew was quite an honor for me as a father. So thank you to all those who coordinate that program and for your gracious hospitality for those young men and women who come to serve at the Capitol. We really appreciate it. My wife and I, earlier this year, we had a crazy fall and we usually try to get away in the fall, and we had not had the opportunity to get away in the fall, so in January we took a trip up to one of our favorite getaways, which is the Grove Park Inn in Asheville, North Carolina, and it's a beautiful drive. It was a little chilly. We got up there, and one of our favorite things to do is to sit around the big, huge stone fire, and several years ago they had to convert one of the fireplaces at the Grove Park to gas logs, but the other fireplace is still a true wood-burning fireplace, and they have these huge split logs. They're probably 4 feet long that they have there, and there's an attendant who comes around regularly to stoke the fire and to put a couple new logs on the fire. And so we were sitting there, and the fire was dwindling, but you could see all of the sparks, or the coals that were just beneath, and he came over and he put a new log on that fire. And I watched as within, it seemed like seconds, that new log was engulfed in flames. Now, it was dry, it was properly seasoned, but the sparks below were absolutely burning hot. And we just sat and watched and enjoyed that for a while. And as I pondered about that, I thought about the song, the hymn that was written in the 1960s, Pass It On. And now, it's very clear in our letter that there's no music or singing, and all of you should be pleased with that, because that would not be my gift. But you remember the song, it only takes a spark to get a fire going. And so I thought about, how does that play out in my personal life? What does that mean for me? I think sometimes as pastors, we believe that we're already pastors, we've already answered a call to ministry, and so we're already doing our part. But I'm reminded each day that each of us are called to what we're doing. And each of us are called to a greater purpose, higher standards. And each day we have to wake up and ask ourselves, what am I going to do today to make a difference? And so this is not a new concept. It is not a new idea. But recently I've just been writing and thinking about, what if every day my first prayer was, I'm going to find someone and I'm going to try to make a difference in their life. And it may be as simple as a kind word, a smile, a simple gesture. It could be sharing my personal resources with someone that gives them an opportunity to become who God has created them to be. And so each day, if I did that, then that's the spark. And if each day I could encourage one other person to do that, and their spark lit a spark and lit a spark, then I think we could really change the world. My wife Shannon works at Chick-fil-A in their corporate office, and just a couple of weeks ago, we were in Anaheim, California for Chick-fil-A's annual meeting, and our great Atlanta and state of Georgia company was sharing all of the wonderful successes that they've had and the ways that they engage the community. And we had a gentleman speaking whose name was Harris III, and he's an illusionist and a speaker, and he speaks at corporate events, and he's an inspirational speaker. And he was telling the story of his young son. I believe his name was Jude. And Harris is on the road a lot, and so he decided he was going to try to find something special for each of his children to do to create quality and quantity time with them. And his son, they would walk by the Dave & Buster's in the mall where they lived, and his son was always captivated by the bells and whistles and the lights and the games. And so one day they went in, and his son was absolutely hooked. And so they would go, and I don't know if you remember when we would go to arcades when I was young, and they had the skee-ball machine, and you would put your money in the skee-ball machine, and at the end you would get physical tickets, and you could take those tickets to a little room, and you could get some cheap plastic toy for your tickets. And so, but now it's all digital, so you get a card, and you load money on the card, and you put the card in the machine, and you play the game, and it puts digital tickets on there. And so as they started doing this almost weekly for a long time, the little boy kind of looked at his dad one day, and his dad said, you can go in here and get something. And so for several trips, he would go in and he would get a package of gummy bears. That was his big gift to get, was a package of gummy bears. And Harris III, I think, much like preachers, we tend to embellish stories. He said that, he points down, he said, I had enough points that I got this Apple Watch that I have on today. I think maybe he was a little embellishing, but at the end of this long period of time, he takes his son into that room, and he said, son, every time we come, you simply get a bag of gummy bears. You have enough points on this card that you could have anything in this room? And he said, Dad, I could have anything in this room? Well, yes, son. And he said, I'm looking around at the trucks and the toys and the iPads, and he had enough points for any of that. He said, but he looked up and his eyes caught all of those huge stuffed animals that were all the way around the room. He said, you mean I could have one of those stuffed animals, Dad? He said, yeah, you could have one of those stuffed animals, but you could also have an iPad. He said, no, I want that unicorn right there in the middle. Dad said, you want the unicorn? You can have anything else in here, but you can have the unicorn. Yeah, Dad, I want that unicorn. Okay, buddy, we'll get the unicorn. And they got down the unicorn. They were walking out to the car, and his dad was still perplexed. And he looks down. And he said, buddy, are you happy with what you picked out? He said, yeah, Dad, I'm really excited. He said, what are you excited about? He said, Sissy is going to love her new unicorn. Matthew's gospel, Jesus reminds us that truly I tell you, unless you change and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles themselves like this child will be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. May we all have a childlike wonder and faith as we go about our business this day, here and beyond. We ask it in his name. Will you pray with me? Almighty God, I pray your special blessings upon this body, upon the families of those gathered here, upon our communities, upon this great state of Georgia, upon our Lieutenant Governor and all those who lead us this day. God, I pray your wisdom in their deliberations. Pray your protection as they lead us and as they serve us. We thank you for this great state and the many ways that we are a shining beacon of hope to so many in the Southeast and beyond. Bless us this day, for we ask it in your name. Amen.
Are there any unanimous consents? We have some special guests with us today that we would like to recognize. Will the Secretary read the resolution?
Senate Resolution 191 by Senators Miller, the 49th, and others. A resolution recognizing the 45th anniversary of the Consulate General of Japan in the Southeast and for other purposes. Whereas the Consulate General of Japan in the Southeast has strengthened the cultural, political, and economic ties between Georgia and Japan and has worked to help and support Japanese citizens and companies in the Southeast. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize the 45th anniversary of the Consul General of Japan in the Southeast and the long and steady friendship between this state and Japan, and commend the efforts of the Consul General to strengthen cultural, educational, political, and economic ties between Georgia and Japan. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon our pro tem to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President. It gives me great pleasure to be here with my friends from Japan today. You know, our Japanese investment in the U.S. in general and in Georgia in particular is very, very significant. And likewise, the U.S. investment in Japan is very, very significant. In fact, $6.3 billion in import-export economic impact between the two countries, much of it right here in Georgia, and we're very, very grateful for that. I'd like to call upon the Consulate General for the state of Georgia, actually for the southeastern United States, to say a few words. Mr. Shinuka-san.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem. Mr. President, honorable members of the Georgia Senate, dear friends, this is a huge honor and privilege to stand before you on behalf of my country as we celebrate the 45th anniversary of the opening of the Japanese consulate here in Atlanta and the long friendship between Georgia and Japan. Since we opened here our consulate for the Southeast 45 years ago, our relations have continued to grow. The state of Georgia helped the Japanese companies to invest, and our companies were proud to call Georgia home and to be good corporate citizens. As a result, we now have more than 600 Japanese-affiliated companies thriving in the Peach State, working with more than 36,000 Georgians. These companies continue to expand, invest, and create new jobs. Today, Japan and Georgia are closer than ever. The Japanese community is proud to be part of the efforts to make Georgia greater, and we look forward to working and thriving together with every other community. Thank you again for today's tremendous honor, and thank you for your continued support. This year, Japan will start a new era in May with a new emperor acceding to the throne. We are confident that in this new era as well, the friendship and partnership between the great state of Georgia and Japan will continue to grow and develop for many long years. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much. I'd like to also recognize the senators that are up here with us, the senator from the 48th and the senator from the 21st. Thank you very, very much. Let's let them for a photograph.
We have some additional special guests today that we'd like to recognize. Will the Secretary read the resolution?
Senate Resolution 236 by Senators Wilkinson of the 50th and others. A resolution recognizing the Georgia Cattlemen's Association for uniting and advancing Georgia's cattle industry and for other purposes. Whereas February 26, 2019 is Georgia Cattlemen's Association Day at the state capitol. And whereas the cattle industry has a $4 billion economic impact in the state of Georgia, and whereas there are 15,000 cattle producers in the state of Georgia, now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize the Georgia Cattlemen's Association for uniting and advancing Georgia's cattle industry. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon the senator to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. It is an honor for me to have the opportunity to represent the leadership of the Georgia Cattlemen's Association this morning. I was looking at some of them. Some of us have traveled across country together when they were wearing those blue jackets. I'm not going to ask them if they still fit, but it is good to have them here today. They're representing the 15,000 cattle producers in our state and the industry that has a $1 billion farm gate value in our state. I would like to introduce the officers that we have with us this morning. Tammy Sheely, who's an executive committee member. Tammy, if you'll raise your hand. Lee Brown is the past president. Kurt Childers is the vice president. Brent Galloway, you want me making a comment? You're the president. You're the president-elect, right? Okay, and then Christy Arnold from Scriven, Georgia, and Wayne County, who is the president. And at this time, I'm going to call on Christy to make some comments.
Thank you, Senator Wilkinson. I just want to take just a brief moment to thank you for what you do for Georgia's cattle industry. We're predominantly cow-calf side of the industry here in Georgia. We do represent a little over 15,000 producers in the state, and the best way you can help us is to eat more beef. We thank you for your day.
Mr. Secretary, will you read the resolution for our next special guests?
Senate Resolution 169 by Senator Strickland of the 17th, a resolution commending the Building Owners and Managers Association of Georgia and recognizing February 26, 2019 as BOMA Georgia Day at the state capitol for other purposes. Whereas BOMA Georgia members are responsible for the ownership, management, and administration of more than 150 million square feet of office space and additional millions of square feet of facilities throughout Georgia. Whereas it is abundantly fitting and proper that the outstanding accomplishments of this extraordinary organization be recognized. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the Building Owners and Managers Association of Georgia and its members for service to the real estate industry and recognize February 26, 2019 as BOMA Georgia Day at the state capitol. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon the senator from the 17th to introduce our special guest this morning.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today is BOMA Day at the Capitol. And those of y'all who don't know, BOMA is Building Owners and Managers Association of Georgia. And the folks behind this group have a large impact on our economy and our state. Commercial real estate contributes over $5.5 billion to our state's economy and supports over 50,000 jobs. More important than that, though, is the way these folks give back for the future of our state. Through the BOMA Georgia Foundation, they're working on research and education in the commercial real estate industry and working to ensure this industry has a great reputation in our state for years to come. Happy to introduce to you guys the CEO of BOMA of Georgia to say a few words, Mr. Gabriel Eckert. Gabriel?
Thank you, Senator Strickland, Mr. President, and members of the Senate. We appreciate being honored and recognized here today. As the Senator mentioned, we're a real estate trade association with a little more than 1,100 members throughout the state, some of which are with us in the gallery today. As an organization, we look forward to continuing to work with you on issues that are important to the real estate industry so that together we can continue to grow and build Georgia's economy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Appreciate it.
Let's go down here and take some pictures. Mr. Secretary, will you read the resolution for our next set of special guests?
Senate Resolution 149 by Senators Kirk of the 13th and others, a resolution commending the Lee County High School Trojans football team for winning the 2018 GHSA 6A State Football Championship and for other purposes. Whereas the Lee County High School Trojans football team has established and maintained a proud tradition of excellence with equal emphasis on character and academics. And whereas the superlative team has completed another triumphant season of football competition by posting a perfect record of 15 wins and 0 losses. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the Lee County High School Trojans football team for winning the 2018 GHSA 6A State Football Championship and extend their most sincere best wishes for continued success. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon the senator from the 13th to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's an honor and a privilege to, we've got a two-time state champ, 6A, here at Lee County High School. And on the podium with me today, we got Ginger Lawrence, Coach Fabrizio, Derek Gorsuch, Eric Price, and Trey Wright. So, Coach, I want you to come say a few words about what it takes to be a winner. And 2 years in a row, and we're looking for a three-peat. And we also have some of the Lee County Trojans up in the gallery. Will y'all stand to be recognized, please? All right, thank you, Coach.
As on behalf of our school system, our Board of Education, and our Superintendent Jason Miller, want to thank you all for this great honor. We have a state championship hat we'd like to present to the president here. So, Mr. President. And last year was after winning the state championship, we got to be recognized in the House. They told us you have to win 2 to get recognized in the Senate. So we went back to back this year, and that was our biggest motivation, knowing we could come to the Senate and be recognized. So again, thank you all very much for this honor.
At this time, do any senators wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 38th.
Good morning again, colleagues. It is my great pleasure to take this opportunity to bring to your attention that today is Sickle Cell Awareness Day here at the Capitol. Please take the opportunity to stop by the second floor South Rotunda to meet with the representatives of Sickle Cell of Georgia and get information and updates about local programs in your districts. I would like to recognize any guests up in the gallery visiting the Capitol today for Sickle Cell Awareness Day. If we have anyone, would you please raise your hand and stand? Well, they're downstairs. You can visit one over here. Great. Please do take the time to stop by downstairs on the second floor. Thank you. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe that our background informs who we are and what we believe, so I think it's important to start there. I grew up in a small South Georgia town. My mother raised me and my little sister by herself as a single mother. She worked as a hairdresser, and eventually she was able to own her own little beauty shop. But like so many others, she didn't have health insurance, so she didn't go to a doctor regularly. When she finally saw one, she was diagnosed with stage 4 uterine cancer. I was 10 years old. She was 30, raising 2 small children, and had gone years without health care. And she had no way to pay the bills if she didn't go to work. I remember distinctly when she came home after surgery, my little sister and I took care of her. And the only thing I knew how to cook at that point was biscuits. So that's what we lived on for a few days. You know, it was a really scary time for me. But now as a mother, I cannot imagine what she was going through. She survived by the grace of God, but that experience has stayed with me throughout my life. The lack of access to affordable health care when you are a single working mother raising children is just untenable. But we were part of a large segment of this state, invisible to most people, the working poor. The working poor who fall into what is known as the health insurance coverage gap, who, like my mother, did everything right, played by the rules, worked overtime. But she made just a little too much to get assistance and not enough to afford an insurance card. Every Georgian should have access to adequate and affordable health care. Every Georgian should be able to see a doctor, no matter if they are rich or poor. 17% of women live in poverty in this state, and for women between the ages of 19 and 64, 17% are uninsured, the third highest in this country. We have the highest maternal mortality rate in this country, and it is safer to have a baby in Pakistan than it is in some parts of South Georgia. Why? Because more than 548 Georgian women are without health insurance. Women make up more than half the population of this state. If Medicaid were fully expanded, we could cover approximately 130,000 more women who work and who are in this coverage gap. High rates of women who cannot afford health care cannot and should not stand, not on my watch. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th.
Thank you, Mr. President. February 26, 1993 was a day marked by tragedy as 6 Americans were killed and over 1,000 were injured when a terrorist attack was carried out against the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City. The victims were John Giovanni, Robert Bob Patrick, Stephen Knapp, Bill Mako, Wilfredo Mercado, and Monica Rodriguez Smith. The events of February 26, 1993, sadly, was just the beginning of terrorist attacks on our country. And as you know, we have had more since then, and we have had to become more vigilant. The events of February 26, 1993 continue to affect countless families and communities today. They are our friends, neighbors, and compatriots. I would like for our body to lend our support to those impacted and continue to take our stands against terrorism. Let's now, 26 years later, remember the victims of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing and stand in solidarity with those affected by this senseless tragedy and with our great nation. Mr. President, I would ask for a moment of silence, please.
The senator has asked for a moment of silence. Please rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 43rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. Today I rise to bring recognition to the organization of organizations by the name of the National Council of Negro Women. Today is NCNW Day at the Capitol. It was founded in 1935 by an extraordinary educator and political leader by the name of Mary McLeod Bethune. NCNW has and continues to fight for jobs, the right to vote, access to affordable health care, quality public education, social justice, and human rights. Today, they will be in room 307. Well, right now they're in the chamber, but they will be in room 307 working on policy to help grow the state of Georgia. If you don't mind, please welcome the fine ladies in all black and pearls, the wonderful NCNW. Please stand. Chapters around the state. Woo! Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to come today on a very happy day for me that I'll be able to wish my wife happy birthday. She's a smart lady. She's here at the Capitol. She's here in Atlanta, but she's on a tour. She's not here. But we wish her a very happy birthday. And I'm not going to do like the senator from the 14th and tell you her age.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 2nd.
Good morning, colleagues. Today, we celebrate Black History Month. And oftentimes, when we talk about Black History Month, we talk about leaders and those entrepreneurs of the past. But today, we are going to do something a little different. We're not only going to talk about our history, because Black history is important. But what is also equally important with Black history is our future. We have great leaders of the past. The black man that invented traffic lights, the black man that invented blood transfusion, the black woman that invented hair care products. We're the people that produced Martin Luther King. We're the people that produce so many great Americans. But those are great Americans, but we also salute Dr. Jamal Touré, an educator, a graduate of Savannah State University, a man that thinks that history should be not only taught, but also taught to others, but also learn, and because we don't know ourselves if we don't understand ourselves. A man that talk about history, talk about Gullah Geechee, what was lost, the lost culture. So we have him in the stands today that keep our Black history in our path. Dr. Touré, can you please raise your hand? Thank you for being with us today. We have Joe Handy, the president and CEO of the Georgia Aquarium. He's been with the Georgia Aquarium for 12 years, making new history, talking about marine sciences, talking about our world and how we can make our ocean a better place. We have Dr. Kevin Woods, a gastroenterologist, a physician, a graduate of Meharry Medical College, now with an Atlanta-based firm that's saving lives every day, producing and talking to young people, making sure that we have new doctors to follow in his path. We have so many great Americans, so many great people that have made differences. We want to continue to strive to make our country better, but we cannot do this unless we are all work together and talk about not just Black history, but Georgia history and American history. Thank you. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. The chair recognizes the senator from the 14th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Seems like just yesterday I was at this well talking about this topic, but I realized there's many people in this chamber who wasn't here last year for me to go through step by step why this state, which used to have the designation of being #1 in human trafficking, why I oppose gambling and casinos. So now all of a sudden I hear that the House is working on some gambling bills and horse racing. And yet all we have to do is pick up the newspaper and we can see what's happening with human trafficking up and down the eastern seaboard all the way to Florida. Let's just forget the facts that we laid out. Last year we laid out that when we had horse racing, the horse racing industry came to us and said, we cannot operate alone. We have to have parimutuel betting. So when we uncovered that a little bit, what we found was off-site betting. Not only just on the 3 or 4 races they were going to have here, but out of state. In essence, we had full-fledged gambling. We peeled it back any further and we talked to law enforcement around the country, and they said right around these facilities it's very secure, but just beyond the perimeter that they control, human trafficking and crime goes up anywhere from 27 to 32%. Ladies and gentlemen, we brag about being #1 in the country to do business, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but now 6 years in a row. I'm not sure why we'd want to monkey with that. This is a bipartisan issue. Human trafficking is not just targeting Republicans. They're not just targeting Democrats. They're not just targeting black, white, Indian. These criminals target everyone, and we should stop it. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm proud to rise this morning to recognize a group of talented, bright young people from Pulaski County. It's the Pulaski Tomorrow Youth Leadership Class. If you all would please stand. Welcome to the Senate. I hope y'all have a great day. I'm glad you're here on a historic day in the Senate, as I hope we pass Senate Bill 106, which will be transformational for access to health care in the state of Georgia. Y'all please welcome them with a round of applause. Thank you. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to commend and thank my colleagues. Last night, we were able to be a part of a celebration for Black History Month that was sponsored by the Lieutenant Governor's Office. I thank Collins for putting that on, but also for my colleagues who were so welcoming, for everyone who attended, from the senator from the 2nd, the senator from the 45th, the senator from the 6th, the senator from Gwinnett in the back, whose number I cannot see because my floor leader colleague is standing in my way. Senator from the 5th, thank you so much, Senator Rahman. Thank you so much for welcoming us all with open arms and for being so respectful and the comments that were made. I really think many bridges were built last night, and I was so appreciative to be a part of the process. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 18th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to tell my colleagues briefly today and remind you, if you don't know, today is Aerospace Day at the Capitol. And I'm particularly proud to stand before you now and tell you a little bit about Middle Georgia State University, which is located in Macon. It serves over 7,800 students. It's one of the nation's best values in public education and something we can all be very proud of. It is Georgia's only 4-year public school of aviation. It has bachelor's in science and aviation science and a management in management, or an online bachelor's of applied science in technical management. It is the home of FAA approved maintenance school, air traffic control tower school. It has multiple airport hangars and several aircraft. It's just absolutely a fine aviation school that's part of the USG that we should be very proud of. It's making progress toward accreditation from the Aviation Accreditation Board International, and it works to foster the Georgia aviation and flight industry. It deserves our commendation and our thanks for the good work that Middle Georgia State University does. Do we have any Middle Georgia State University students in the gallery? Not at this time, but for those in the audience and outside the chamber that within the sound of our voice, we thank you very much for the support this Senate chamber and the House and our governor has given to Middle Georgia State University. Thank you. Mr. President, I yield the will.
Chair would like to apologize, but would like to recognize the senator from the 35th. Apologize for that delay. My fault. Thank you.
No apology needed. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Today is Mothers Against Drunk Driving Day. So you see MAD all around, and especially on the second floor. So we invite all of you, if you get a minute, to go on the second floor on the south side and look at the wall that has pictures on it. Unfortunately, those pictures represent people who were victims of DUI. It's over 300 deaths last year, 25% of all traffic deaths in Georgia last year. And one day I'd like to see 0 up there. Wouldn't that be great? But thanks to all of you, we have been every year passing legislation to make the roads safer. And I am happy that the national president this year has come to this event today. So at 1 o'clock, she's going to speak downstairs. And she lost her daughter many years ago to a drunk driver. And perhaps most people know that the pain that drunk drivers can cause. I know personally because this was not a statistic or just a picture. This was my son that lost his life to a 5-time DUI offender right here in Atlanta, going to the store for my neighbor, always helping other people, doing things. He was a youth minister, and he loved the Lord, and he loved people, and he was excited about leaving high school. A few months later, he would have been in college. So my son was laid to rest due to the irresponsible actions of a drunk driver. But by the grace of God and the strength and support of my family and organizations like MAD, I've worked to turn my tragedy into a blessing for other families because I knew that I was not alone in pain. Again, when you go downstairs and see that wall, you will see real people who once lived. And if the wall was bigger, you'd see the victims. In fact, some of them in the House and the Senate who are victims of DUI, and luckily, they were just injured or maimed in the result of a person driving under the influence. I know my time is up. This was very important to me and so many people. So thank you, senators, for always looking at making our roads safer. Mr. President, I yield the will.
Thank you, Senator. You have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Is there objection to the adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? For what purpose does the majority leader rise?
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent that Senate Bill 106 be engrossed.
The Majority Leader has asked for unanimous consent that Senate Bill 106 be engrossed. Is there objection? There is objection. Would the Majority Leader like to speak to his motion?
Thank you, Mr. President. Friends, and I do consider everybody in this body friends. We have an opportunity today to improve the quality of health care for all Georgians. We're not saying that we should simply adopt a program that has failed to live up to its promises. Today is the first step of creating a new system, a system that will provide generations of Georgians accessible, affordable, and quality health care. I know that there are numerous bills out there that pertain to health care coming forward in this session. It is in those where issues outside this scope belong. Let's not turn this tremendous opportunity to improve health care. Let's not turn it into something that's not right for Georgia. We have the opportunity to do something great today. Let's not miss it. I yield the well.
Would any other senators wish to speak to the motion? The chair recognizes the Minority Leader.
Mr. President, I'll be brief. I won't debate the entire matter, but this bill is very important. It affects the lives of hundreds of thousands of Georgians and can actually make the difference between life and death for some people. Our caucus has concerns. I have concerns about this bill. Simple amendments would improve this bill and give it a chance to have bipartisan support. Shutting down the opportunity to debate this bill fully and amendments for this bill is not the right way for this Senate to go. In the committee process, we had very limited debate that I'll talk about. That was unfortunate. But to not allow us to try to improve this bill means that many of us that would like to move forward in a positive manner will not be able to do so today. I hope members from both parties will defeat this motion to engross so this bill can be effectively improved and have a chance for strong support across the aisle. Thank you.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 26th to speak to the motion.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, I consider the Majority Leader a good friend of mine. We even went to Cuba together. I would ask you to take a serious look at this. One of the things that has happened to us, you've been told by ACA was bad. Nothing bad about ACA. You had to pay under the Affordable Care Act to get insurance. You had to make at least $16,000 as an individual. The Medicaid expansion was for those who fell below the $16,000, who end up in our emergency room as primary health care. And we know that's the most expensive health care in the country. When you apply for a waiver, you really don't know what's all in it until once it goes, and then there is a 60-day period to get comments on it. It's called 1115. As you remember, we got 1115 waiver because on the telemedicine side, they agreed to let the ambulance be billed for Medicaid and other things as though you were in the doctor's office. We passed and we have looked at $200 million to help rural hospitals. And a lot of them have been saved just by that tax credit. But that is an income tax credit only for the state, not the federal. If we would take that money that comes into these hospitals and match it with Medicaid funds, we would get close to 10 times that money. You could then take and give those hospitals who've gotten that money in to help them, you can give them 1.5 to 2 times that, and then take the rest of the money and deal with rural Georgia who has no health care at all. This is serious business. Under the ACA plan, they did not look for states to oppose it. DSH monies, which we call disproportionate share hospitals, that money was supposed to be reduced because people would have a card to go get or see the doctor. The states fought it, but nobody changed the DSH money proportion, which means now it has started dwindling. And most of those rural hospitals, your 25-bed access hospitals, people are on Medicaid, Medicare, or no insurance at all. Now, those of us in here are fortunate. I pay for my insurance. But when I go to the hospital, something's added to my bill just to take care of those folks who don't have insurance. So I said some insurance is better than no insurance. At least those hospitals who are serving those folks get something out of it. I said to you, think about this, because when you do this waiver and reduce it from 138% to 100%, you're going to affect a lot of folks. And when you affect them, you also affect yourselves, because you pay for your insurance, and when you go to the hospital, now another portion of a bill is going to be added to your bill to help pay for those folks who don't have insurance at all. This is serious business. I wish we could have had an open debate about it. It's not about a certain plan or this plan, but how do we serve those folks who have not been served? When you go to Southwest Georgia, you don't have doctors. You don't even have a pharmacist. Yet we talk about we want to help folks, but the very folks we're talking about helping, we're trying to hurt. I ask you to look at it. Let's see if we can't have some more discussion about this before we just agree to carte blanche and just give it away. Remember now, the General Assembly took the authority away from the governor to act on his own to do it. So the only thing you're doing with this amendment is saying that he can go and apply for a waiver. The governor normally could apply for the waiver up front, but the General Assembly took that authority away. So please don't get caught up with ACA, the Affordable Care Act, the Obamacare. Stop thinking about Obamacare, start thinking about health care. This is what this is about. This is what it is about. Folks being able to get monies to take care of their health care needs, and basically to keep us from having to reach in our deep pockets and pay their bill. Some money is better than no money when they're getting $0 for uncompensated health care. So let's look at this real seriously, because the people we are talking about are the ones who see about us in the hospital, the ones that clean the bedpan, the ones that wash the sheets, take care of us, but don't have enough money to get health insurance themselves. So think about that.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th. This debate's limited to 10 minutes on each side of the motion. There are 3 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand before you as a citizen of Georgia, and on behalf of the citizens of Georgia, this is one of the most important bills coming before this body this year, and we are to be held accountable to our voters, and we should be debating this bill, which is the most important bill we're going to see. This is life or death. This is extremely important, and we should be ashamed that we are not letting this be open to debate. We have so many things we can bring together in common, but we haven't even been able to have the conversation. This is not Republican or Democrat. This is life or death. I yield the will.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 1st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief, but many times when things are repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated, it sometimes can, if it goes unchallenged, it becomes a fact. Well, when things are not factually accurate, I think we need to take issue with that, and I actually take offense to that. To say that in the Senate Health and Human Services that we did not debate this is just not factually accurate. We had more than a dozen people sign up for this. It was no secret that you could sign up. People were allowed to sign up. We let everybody speak. And today, to say that we're not debating this is just not factually accurate either. I mean, we're going to debate this and discuss this. There's no doubt about that. But to say things that are not, that are challenging, sometimes you just need to say that that's not necessarily right. And that's what I was here to say that. It's not right to say things that are misleading. Without further ado, I think we need to move on with this, and I agree. We need to debate and discuss this particular issue, which I do believe is the most important issue that we will face this session and maybe over the next 4 years. Thank you.
The Majority Leader has moved that Senate Bill 106 be engrossed. All those in favor of the motion will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 35, the nays are 20. The motion has prevailed, and Senate Bill 106 is engrossed. We are now moving on to the rules calendar. Will the Secretary read Senate Bill 18?
Senate Bill 18 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others, a bill entitled an act to amend Chapter 7 and Title 33 of the OCGA, relating to kinds of insurance, limits of risk, and reinsurance so as to provide definitions to provide that direct primary care agreements are not insurance, to exempt such agreements from regulation as insurance, to provide for discontinuance of services under certain circumstances and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Rules offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 18, a bill entitled an act to amend Chapter 7 Title 33 of the OCGA relating to kinds of insurance, limits of risk, and reinsurance so as to provide definition to provide that direct primary care agreements are not insurance, to exempt such agreements from regulation as insurance, to provide for discontinuance of services under certain circumstances and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
The Chair would like to recognize the Senator from the 32nd to speak to Senate Bill 18.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I'm presenting Senate Bill 18 today, the Direct Primary Care Act. A similar bill passed the Senate unanimously in 2017 and died in the House. The goal of this bill is to give patients another option when deciding on their medical care. 24 states currently have direct primary care laws. These arrangements are happening in Georgia, but there's nothing in our statute about direct primary care that allows it. This bill should clarify that. Direct primary care allows contracting between a physician and a patient for healthcare services for a set monthly amount. This model covers in-office services and is not insurance. It's a way for people who can't afford high-dollar plans to get the majority of their care handled for a reasonable and predictable amount of money. It's also a way for people to keep their primary care doctor if they change plans or if their doctor is not in their insurance network. The fees are agreed between the doctor and the patient in writing, and the bill allows termination of the agreement with 30-day notice. The bill can be layered with catastrophic insurance to cover hospitalization or other services that can't be provided in a doctor's office. The fees cannot be applied to a deductible or paid with an HSA due to IRS rules, although there's federal legislation pending to allow this. Direct primary care is different than concierge medicine because in that type of arrangement, the doctor's filing the insurance and there's an additional fee for VIP service. Having a regular primary care doctor who knows you to coordinate care is a great benefit for patients, and it can save a lot of unnecessary expense with needless trips to the emergency room. Having an option for managing care with a primary care doctor outside of insurance is a great option for patients, and it gets back to the physician-patient relationship. The testimony from doctors practicing in this program in our committee was that direct primary care had restored the joy of practicing medicine. I'm happy to answer questions and would ask for your favorable consideration.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I yield.
Senator, isn't it true that for the families that we represent in our communities that this is going to give them more options and more access for themselves and their children?
I believe that to be true. Thank you.
And Senator, one further question. Would you yield?
I yield.
Isn't it also true that ultimately this will reduce the overall cost of health care by preventing folks from using much more expensive options when they get to a more serious injury?
I believe that's correct. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator.
Does the senator yield for more questions?
Yes, I would.
Chair
yield.
recognizes the senator from the 11th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I yield.
Is it not true that OBGYN in rural areas are considered primary care positions?
Yes.
Is it not true that your bill would give just one more avenue for people to get primary care, which is a way to save the patient and their family a lot of harm, as well as save the state and all payers money?
I believe that's correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I support your bill.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 45th.
Madam Chairwoman, would you yield?
I yield.
Thank you very much. Is it not true that, as on this issue in health care, that the Senate has led the way and that we actually had this bill last year?
Actually, it was in 2017, Senator, but yes, the Senate has led on this bill.
Is it not true in those years, those subsequent years, that we have worked on this bill and we have supported primary care and access to primary care? Is that not true?
Yes, ma'am, that's true.
Is it not true in the Health Committee that we have especially looked at rural health care, and that this is one of the exact ways that people with access to care in the rural areas will have access to care, as the previous senator said, with OBGYNs and delivery of babies?
I believe that's correct.
Is it also not true that in trying to remedy our maternal and infant mortality rates, that this is the exact way that we can accomplish that goal?
I think it would definitely help.
Thank you very much.
You have no more questions.
Thank you. I yield.
The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 55, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Will the Secretary read House Bill 62?
House Bill 62 by Representative Cooper of the 43rd and others, a bill to be titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 1 of Title 31 of the OCGA, relating to general provisions relating to health so as to require certain notice in a mammogram report to patients with dense breast tissue and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 1st to speak to House Bill 62.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, this bill is up close and personal for me for several reasons. Someone in my family very close to me has had breast cancer as recently as 2 years ago. This is also up close and personal relating to a constituent of mine in Savannah in the Pooler area, Margie Singleton, who's in our gallery today. And it gives me great pleasure to present this bill relating to mammograms. This is a simple bill. It requires radiologists to inform their patients that their breasts are dense. Dense breasts can increase your risk for breast cancer, and it encourages the radiologist. As a matter of fact, it requires the radiologist to give them information, and you can see in the bill that it is laid out there that the breast tissue is dense and it's common. It is not abnormal, but it does increase the risk for breast cancer. And it is given to them as the relationship of the interpretation of the study. So basically the way it works is that patients get the information that their mammogram is staged from 1 to 4, being very low risk, 4 being no risk, 0 being incomplete, 4 being high risk. But it now will also include relating to breast density, which makes it difficult to interpret. So it does not cause it increases the awareness of the patient is what it does. And that's all this does relating to this bill, Margie's Law, which is very personal relating to Margie and to my family. I would ask for your favorable consideration. I'll be happy to answer any questions, Mr. President.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you to the senator from the 1st for sharing his personal story. I, too, stand to speak in support of this bill from personal experience. Having the ability to have advanced mammograms is extremely important to the health of women, and having availability to those mammograms is also extremely important, so I urge this body to pass this bill. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise in support of this bill. This is not just a women's issue because all of us that are women have families, men in our lives, and so I think that all the men should be very supportive of this bill along with the women. Thank you very much.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too rise to support this House bill. This started out as a local bill, a local issue with one woman. And she realized that this affects so many other people and so many other families. And she took it upon herself to spread a message. So I too support this bill, and I urge all of us to support this magnificent legislation that will actually save lives. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 55, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Will the Secretary read the caption for Senate Bill 115?
Senate Bill 115 by Senator Unton of the 45th and others, a bill we title enactment of Article 2, Chapter 34 of Title 43 of the OCGA, relating to the Medical Practice Act of the State of Georgia, so as to provide for telemedicine licenses for physicians licensed in other states to engage in the practice of medicine with patients in this state through telemedicine, to provide for requirements for issuance of a telemedicine license, to provide for restrictions, to provide for notice of restrictions placed on a license by another state, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the Senator from the 45th.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a great day in Georgia when we get to stand up here and all day on the floor of the Senate talk about health care. Because we all know that when we were on the campaign trail this summer and this fall, that's all we heard about at town hall meetings and debates is how we are going to increase access to health care. And that's exactly what the next two bills do. Senate Bill 115 in particular is about telemedicine and telehealth. We have talked about telehealth for several years now, but unfortunately it's not being utilized correctly. And that's exactly what the Lieutenant Governor recognized and why he brings forth, and I bring forth with him, these two bills about telemedicine, trying to improve the infrastructure of health care so that more people do have access. Senate Bill 115 authorizes the Georgia Composite Medical Board. As you know, that's the physicians that regulate medical care in the state of Georgia for physicians to physically not have to be in the state of Georgia. There are lots of physicians in other areas of the United States who would like to be able to practice here. The good thing about this bill, it standardizes the system of care so that the way physicians practice in the state of Georgia would be the same way a physician would practice in New York. So it's that same quality care, it's that same regulatory process. With that, Mr. President, I'll answer any questions. This is just licensure of those physicians in other states so that they can practice telemedicine here in the state of Georgia. I'll answer any questions.
Senator, you have no questions.
Thank you. I yield the will. I ask for your favorable consideration of Senate Bill 115.
Thank you, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. If I could have everyone's attention, the Senate will stand in recess until 12:30. 12:30. We'll start back up at 12:30 sharp. Thank you.